The fire is crackling. The grandchildren are laughing. The table is groaning with turkey and cranberry sauce, the perfect American Christmas. Everyone is circled around the tree phones out waiting for Lily's reaction. My little sister tears open the velvet box and screams. A $12,000 Rolex glitters on her wrist, while my parents beam with pride, and strangers hug her like she just won the lottery. Then it's my turn. I'm 52 years old. My mother hands me a red envelope with that tight, pitying smile she's perfected over decades. Inside, a $2 Hallmark card that says, "To a special daughter-in-law." Not even daughter. Daughter-in-law. The room goes silent for half a second, then everyone starts talking at once, pretending they didn't just witness my execution. My mother leans over to Lily and whispers loud enough for me to hear. Finally, she knows her place. Something inside me snapped clean cold and irreversible. I stood up, looked at every person who had treated me like the family's spare part my entire life, and I walked out into the snow without a word. That night, a stranger was waiting for me in the dark, and what he handed me proved my whole life had been stolen, including the woman I'd called mother for 52 years. If you've ever been the scapegoat, the forgotten one, the one who gave everything and got nothing, stay until the very end. Because the revenge that comes next, it's not just sweet, it's biblical. My name is Nora Elizabeth Harlan. I'm 52 years old, a high school librarian in a small Wisconsin town, the kind of place where everybody still waves when you drive past, even if they don't know your name. I have never married, never had children, and for 35 years I have been the reliable one. The daughter who moved back home when Dad got sick. The sister who paid the bills when Lily decided college wasn't for her. The aunt who babysat every weekend, so Lily and her husband could have a life. I told myself it was love. I told myself it was duty. I told myself a lot of things. Christmas Eve, 2024 started out like every other one I could remember. The house smelled of pine and cinnamon. The fireplace was roaring, and the long oak table my grandfather built in 1958 was covered with Mom's best china and enough food to feed half the county. Lily's 3 kids were running circles around the tree in their matching reindeer pajamas. My brother-in-law Mark was carving the turkey like he was auditioning for a holiday commercial. And Dad sat quietly in his recliner with the oxygen tubing tucked behind his ears, smiling the small, tired smile he'd worn since the cancer came back the second time. Everything looked perfect. That was the problem. It always looked perfect right up until the moment it wasn't. Presents came after dessert. Mom had been dropping hints for weeks about something special for Lily, and the excitement in the room felt like static electricity. Lily, 38 and glowing the way only the permanently favored child can glow, perched on the edge of the sofa, while Mom handed her a small velvet box tied with gold ribbon. The second Lily opened it, she screamed. Not a polite squeal, a full-throated jumping up and down scream that made the dog bark in the kitchen. A Rolex, a rose gold date, just with diamonds around the bezel. $12,000 on a wrist that already wore more jewelry than I owned in my entire life. The room erupted. Hugs, tears, phones flashing, my nieces shrieking. "Aunt Lily, you're a princess!" Mom's eyes were shining like she'd just given birth all over again. Dad lifted his weak hand in a little salute. Even Mark looked stunned and grateful, mouthing, "Thank you, Mom," over Lily's shoulder while she held the watch up to every light in the room so the diamonds could catch fire. Then Mom turned to me. She had a red envelope in her hand, the kind you buy in the checkout lane at the drugstore. She gave me that tight, sympathetic smile I'd seen 1,000 times, the one that said, "I'm sorry you're you, but here we are." "And something for my Nora," she announced, just loud enough for everyone to hear the charity in her voice. I took the envelope. My fingers already knew what was inside before I opened it. A card. $2 at most. I slid it out anyway because that's what you do when 30 people are watching. The front had a watercolor poinsettia and the words, "To a special daughter." Not even my name written inside, just a generic "Love Mom and Dad" in Mom's careful cursive. No gift card, no check, no sweater, nothing. $2 worth of guilt and obligation. The room went quiet for half a heartbeat, the way it does when everyone realizes at the same moment that something cruel just happened in plain sight. Then the noise rushed back in louder than before, as if volume alone could erase what everyone had seen. Lily was still holding her wrist up to the light. Mom was dabbing her eyes with a napkin, talking about how proud she was that Lily had made something of herself. My nieces went back to fighting over who got to try on the Rolex next. Dad just looked at me with that helpless expression he'd worn since I was 10, the one that said, "I wish I could fix this, but I never knew how." I stood there holding the card, feeling the cheap paper between my fingers like a verdict. 52 years old, and this was what I was worth. $2 and a lie about being special. Mom leaned over to Lily close enough that her whisper carried across the coffee table like a slap. Finally, she said, voice dripping with relief, she knows her place. "You've always been the daughter I prayed for." The words hit me harder than any hand ever could. Something inside my chest cracked open, clean and cold the way lake ice splits in March. I felt it travel up my spine and settle behind my eyes. I looked around the room at every face that had watched this same scene play out in different versions my entire life. And I understood with perfect clarity that nothing was ever going to change unless I made it change. I set the card down on the table next to Lily's empty velvet box very gently, the way you lay a dead thing to rest. Then I walked to the front hall, took my coat off the hook, and opened the door. The Wisconsin night rushed in sharp and clean and minus 12 degrees. Snow was falling thick and silent, already covering the driveway in a fresh white sheet. "Nora." Mom called after me, half laughing, half angry. "Where on earth are you going? We haven't even had pie." I didn't answer. I stepped outside, pulled the door closed behind me, and let the freezing air burn my lungs. The porch light painted a small yellow circle on the snow, and beyond it, everything was dark and endless. I was halfway down the steps when I noticed the tire tracks in the fresh snow. 2 straight lines leading to a black SUV idling at the curb with its lights off. The driver's window slid down just enough for a man's voice to reach me through the storm. "Nora Elizabeth Harlan," he asked quietly. "I've been waiting 30 years for you to walk out that door." I stopped heart hammering against my ribs and realized the night I thought I knew had only just begun. But outside in the snow, someone was watching the house, someone who had been waiting for this exact night. The cold hit me like a slap the instant I stepped off the porch, the kind of Wisconsin cold that steals your breath and makes your eyes water before you even realize you're crying. The door shut behind me with a soft final click that sounded louder than any slam. I didn't look back. I just walked, boots crunching through the fresh snow purse, banging against my hip coat, pulled tight around me like armor that had never actually protected me from anything that mattered. The stranger's voice still hung in the air. "I've been waiting 30 years for you to walk out that door." I didn't answer him. Not yet. I needed distance. First needed the wind to scour the smell of turkey and pine and Mom's Chanel No. 5 out of my nose. I kept walking past the SUV, past the glow of the porch light, past the colored bulbs blinking on the eaves like nothing cruel had ever happened inside that house. The snow was coming down so thick I couldn't see the streetlights anymore, just white everywhere, swallowing sound and time. And with every step, the memories I had spent a lifetime burying started rising up like ghosts that had finally been given permission to speak. I was 8 the first Christmas I understood the rules. Lily was 4, all curls and dimples, sitting on Dad's lap, while Mom unwrapped a tiny velvet dress from Paris for her. I got a plastic doll with one eye that didn't open. I remember saying thank you because that's what good girls do. And Mom kissed the top of my head and said, "Nora's our practical one." Practical. That was the word they used when they wanted to say less. When I was 12, Lily got a pony, an actual pony. Dad built a little barn behind the house and Lily named it Stardust and cried happy tears for weeks. I got a savings bond. Mom said college was expensive and I was the one who would need it. I smiled and said thank you again even while I watched Lily ride circles in the snow wearing a new red coat that cost more than our furnace repair. At 16, Lily got a brand new Mustang the day she passed her driver's test. I got the keys to Dad's 10-year-old Buick and was told to be grateful it still ran. At 21, Lily got a trip to Europe after she dropped out of community college for the second time. I got told to defer my own scholarship because Dad's heart was acting up, and someone needed to stay home and take care of things. I did. I always did. Every Christmas, the same ritual. Lily opened box after box, squealing, hugging, shining. I opened envelopes with checks that were always for later, always because you're so responsible, Nora. I told myself it was fair. I told myself love wasn't measured in dollars. I told myself so many lies that by 52 I had almost started to believe them. The wind shifted and slapped snow against my cheeks hard enough to sting. I stopped walking, suddenly aware I had no idea where I was. The street had disappeared. There was only white and the faint orange halo of a distant street lamp. My fingers were numb inside my gloves, and the tears I hadn't allowed in the house were freezing on my lashes. That was when I heard Grandma's voice clear as the day she died. I was 25, sitting beside her hospital bed while machines beeped, and the smell of antiseptic tried to hide what was coming. Her hand was paper-thin veins blue under translucent skin, but her grip was fierce when she pulled me close. "Nora," she rasped, "listen to me. Your mother hides things from you. Important things. One day you'll see the truth, and when you do, don't let her tell you it's for your own good. Promise me." I promised. I was crying too hard to ask questions, and she was gone 2 hours later. Mom told everyone Grandma was confused at the end that pain medication makes people say strange things. I let it go. I was good at letting things go. I started walking again, slower now, legs heavy. My right hand slipped into my coat pocket for a tissue and brushed against something I didn't remember putting there. A small, stiff square of paper. I pulled it out, cupped it against my chest to shield it from the snow, and unfolded it under the faint glow of my phone. A single line in black ink. Finalize everything after Christmas. Dad's coat. I had grabbed it off the hook in the hall by mistake when I left. His old wool one still hung there because Mom refused to throw anything away. This note must have fallen out of his pocket when I yanked it on. But the handwriting wasn't his. Dad's script was shaky now, childlike from the Parkinson's that came after the cancer. This was strong, elegant, the kind of penmanship they taught in Catholic schools before I was born. I knew that handwriting. I had seen it on birthday cards when I was small, cards that stopped coming when I was 7 or 8. Cards signed with love from someone Mom said had died years before I could remember her face. My breath fogged in front of me, hanging in the air like a ghost that refused to leave. And I knew that handwriting. But it belonged to someone who was supposed to be dead. The note trembled between my frozen fingers, the ink already starting to blur under the snowflakes that refused to leave it alone. I stared at the words, "Finalize everything after Christmas," as if they might rearrange themselves into something less impossible. My pulse hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. The handwriting belonged to Aunt Clara. Aunt Clara, who had died 6 months ago in a nursing home in Madison, who had never married, never had children, and who used to slip me $20 bills when I was little and whisper, "This is just between us girls." Aunt Clara, who Mom said had lost touch with reality in her final years. Aunt Clara, who was supposed to be in the ground. Headlights cut through the white curtain behind me, slow and deliberate. The black SUV I had walked past minutes earlier eased forward until it was beside me, engine purring low against the howl of the wind. The driver's window slid down with a soft mechanical sigh. The man inside was older, 70, maybe 75, with silver hair trimmed neat under a wool cap and a face carved deep by Wisconsin winters. He looked at me for a long moment, not with pity, but with something closer to recognition. "Nora Elizabeth Harlan," he said, calm and clear, the way you pronounce a name you have carried in your coat pocket for decades. I took one step back, snow crunching under my boot. Nobody called me that. Not teachers, not doctors, not even the DMV. To my family, I had always been just Nora, plain Nora Dependable. Nora, the Nora you didn't need to waste syllables on. Hearing my full legal name in the dark felt like being stripped naked in public. "How do you know my name?" My voice came out hoarse, half lost in the wind. He reached across the passenger seat and lifted a thick manila envelope sealed with a circle of old-fashioned red wax. Because for 20 years I've been trying to put this in your hands, and every single time your mother sent me away. He paused, eyes steady on mine. My name is Richard Ellison. I was Clara Harlan's attorney, and for the last 6 months I've been the executor of her estate. Clara made me swear on my license actually, that I would only give you this in person on the day you finally left that house for good. The envelope looked heavy, the kind that holds more than paper. The wax seal bore the imprint of a tiny rose, Clara's favorite flower. I could almost smell the nursing home soap on her hands the last time I visited, the way she had gripped my wrist and tried to say something Mom cut off by suddenly needing water, needing pills, needing the nurse. 11 times, he continued, voice gentle but firm. 11 times since 2004 I have driven to your parents' house with this same envelope. Sometimes I waited in the driveway. Sometimes I made it to the door. Every time your mother met me, took the envelope, promised to deliver it, and the next day it came back to my office unopened, marked, return to sender. After the 4th time I started keeping records. After the 8th, Clara changed her instructions only when you walk away on your own. I stared at the envelope as if it might bite me. 20 years. 11 attempts. While I was inside that house cooking turkeys and folding laundry and pretending $2 cards were normal, someone had been trying to reach me with something my own mother made sure I never saw. Why didn't you call or mail it to the library where I work? My teeth had started to chatter, though I couldn't feel the cold anymore. Clara was very specific, Richard said. She said your mother monitors everything. Phone bills, mail at work, even the library's interoffice envelopes. She was afraid if it came any other way, you would never get to open it yourself. He held it out through the window. Tonight, you walked out. Tonight is the first time in 20 years the porch light went off and nobody came chasing after you. Tonight is the night Clara waited for. My hand moved before my brain caught up. The envelope was surprisingly heavy, the paper crisp and expensive under my fingertips. The red wax was still perfect, unbroken. Whatever was inside had been protected like a relic. Clara told me to tell you one thing when I finally handed this over, Richard said quietly. She said, tell Nora I'm sorry I didn't fight harder while I still had strength, but I never stopped trying. I pressed the envelope against my chest right over my heart as if it might fly away in the wind. Snowflakes melted against the wax, leaving tiny dark spots like blood. Richard reached into his coat and produced a business card, plain cream stock with raised lettering. When you're ready tonight, tomorrow, next week, call me. There's a key inside and an address. Everything else Clara wanted you to have is waiting. He looked at me for a long second, something gentle in his eyes. You don't have to go home tonight, Nora Elizabeth. There's a motel 2 miles down County Road K. Clean, quiet, prepaid under your name for as long as you need. I took the liberty. I couldn't speak. My throat was raw from cold and unsaid words that had been stacking up for 52 years. He gave a small nod, the kind men his age give when they have done what honor required, and nothing more needs to be spoken. The window rose silently. The SUV eased forward, tires whispering over fresh snow, taillights fading into white until I was alone again. I stood there a long time, clutching the envelope, feeling its weight settle into my bones like truth finally given mass. Inside was a letter that didn't just change my life. It proved my life had been stolen from me. The snow kept falling soft and relentless, erasing my footprints almost as fast as I made them. I stood in the middle of the deserted road, clutching Clara's envelope like it was the only solid thing left in the world. My fingers were too numb to break the seal out here. The wind would scatter the pages before I could read a word. I needed light warmth, a place where no one could take this from me again. The motel Richard Ellison mentioned was 2 miles away, and for the first time in my adult life I had somewhere to go that wasn't back. I walked. The envelope rode against my heart the whole way, thumping with every beat like a second pulse. By the time the neon vacancy sign appeared through the white blur, my legs were shaking from cold, and something else I didn't yet have a name for. The clerk, a bored teenager playing games on his phone, slid a key across the counter without even asking for ID. Room 12, back corner, quiet. Prepaid. I locked the door behind me, turned the deadbolt, and for 30 seconds just leaned my forehead against the cheap wood and breathed. The room smelled of old carpet and coffee, but it was mine tonight. I set the envelope on the small table under the lamp, pulled off my wet coat, and sat down. My hands shook harder now than they had in the storm. The red wax seal stared up at me like an eye. I took the motel pen, slid it under the edge, and cracked the rose imprint in half. The paper inside was thick, expensive, folded with the kind of care people only use when they know they won't get another chance. Clara's handwriting filled 4 pages steady until the very end, when the letters grew larger and more slanted, as if the pen had started arguing with her failing strength. My dearest Nora, if you are reading this, it means I am gone and you finally walked out of that house. I am sorry it took so long. I tried everything short of kidnapping you myself, but your mother watches you the way a jailer watches a prisoner who might one day remember she is innocent. First, the truth about money, because that is the easiest part to prove and the hardest for them to deny. When your grandparents died, Grandpa in 1995, Grandma in 2008, their estate was never meant to be split equally. Grandma changed her will after Lily was born, because she saw what was happening even then. 70% of everything. The house, the farmland, leases, the investment accounts. The trust that paid out every quarter was to come to you, Nora, because you were the one who stayed, the one who cared for them, the one they trusted to carry the family forward with honor. 15% was left to me, 15% to Eleanor. Lily was mentioned only as a contingent beneficiary in case none of us survived. Your mother and Lily began draining your trust in 1998. I have the bank records. Forged signatures on withdrawal slips, your name practiced until it looked real enough to fool tellers who didn't know you. Money that was supposed to pay for your college, your first home. Your security went to Lily's cars, her weddings, her shopping trips to Chicago. When the quarterly statements started showing discrepancies, your mother filed papers with a doctor in Milwaukee, a man who later lost his license, claiming you had episodes of instability and could not manage your own finances. They appointed themselves co-trustees. They never told you the trust existed. I fought them in court twice. Both times your mother produced letters supposedly written by you saying you were grateful for their help and didn't want the burden. I knew the letters were lies the moment I saw them. You were 25 and 29 when those letters were dated, living at home, working 2 jobs to keep the lights on. You would never have written those words. But the judge believed a mother over a spinster aunt, and the case was sealed because of the mental health claims. There is a safe deposit box at First National in Madison. Key and paperwork are in the second envelope inside this one. Everything is there. The real will. The bank ledgers, the forged documents with your mother's fingerprints all over them. Take it to a lawyer who does not golf with your family. Take it soon. And now, the harder truth, the one I promised Grandma I would tell you when you were ready. Eleanor tried to take you home when you were 3 years old. She came to the house with a little suitcase and a car seat, crying, begging to keep her baby. Your mother called the police and told them a crazy woman was trying to kidnap her child. They threatened to have Eleanor arrested if she ever came back. She never stopped trying. Every birthday, every Christmas, letters, gifts, money orders, all returned unopened. Eleanor is family Nora. She is the family you were never allowed to know. I wish I had been braver. Forgive me. Burn this letter after you read it, or don't. Just promise me you will finally claim what is yours. With all the love they never let me give you in person. Aunt Clara. I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. 70%. Forged signatures. Episodes of instability. Eleanor is family. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table until the fake wood cut into my palms. All those years I thought I was poor, because I chose duty over ambition. I was actually being robbed in slow motion while I cooked their dinners and folded their laundry. Every sacrifice I made had paid for Lily's life, not mine. And Eleanor. The name I had been told belonged to a tragic aunt who died giving birth to a baby that didn't survive. The name Mom crossed herself over whenever it came up. Eleanor had tried to take me home. I looked at the last line again, written larger, underlined twice. Eleanor is family. Your real family. The lamp flickered once, as if the motel itself was startled by the weight of what had just been said. Eleanor is family. Your real family. The words stared back at me, underlined twice in Clara's trembling ink. Eleanor is family. Your real family. I read them until the letters blurred, until the cheap motel lamp felt too bright and the air too thin. My chest rose and fell like I had been running, but I hadn't moved an inch. Family. Real family. The phrase sat in my mouth like a stone I didn't know how to swallow. I looked around the room for something to anchor me, anything, and my eyes landed on the small black purse I had carried out of the house. It was the same purse I had used for 20 years, cracked leather zipper that sometimes stuck. I had grabbed it out of habit, the way you grab a life jacket when the ship starts to sink. I upended it on the bed the way I had done 1,000 times after work: library card, wallet, keys, a few receipts, and then something slid out that I had forgotten was even there. A Polaroid photograph, edges curled, colors gone soft with age. I knew the picture existed, but I had not looked at it in decades. Mom kept it tucked in the back of a hallway frame behind newer family portraits, the way people hide things they don't want seen too often. I must have slipped it into my purse the last time I dusted the shelves, meaning to ask her about it one day, and then forgetting, because there was always laundry to fold or a child to drive somewhere. I turned it over with shaking fingers. There was my mother, 25 years old, thin from worry hair and the stiff flip she wore in the 70s, standing beside a woman I had never met in real life. The woman was beautiful in the way that hurts to look at: dark auburn hair to her waist, green eyes, a smile so gentle it seemed to hold the whole world carefully. In her arms was a newborn wrapped in the white hospital blanket with tiny pink stripes. The baby's left hand had come free of the blanket fingers splayed toward the camera, and on the back of that tiny hand was a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon. I dropped the photo like it was hot. My own left hand flew to my chest, then to my side, then to the mirror on the closet door. I had that same crescent moon on the back of my left hand, pale against winter skin, unmistakable. I had been teased about it in grade school, told it looked like a witch's mark. Mom always said it was from her side of the family, that Grandma had one too. She said it the same way she said Eleanor had died in childbirth, with a baby that didn't survive: quick, flat, no room for questions. I picked the photograph up again, more carefully this time. The beautiful woman was looking down at the baby, not at the camera, and the love pouring out of her face was so raw it made my throat close. My mother stood half a step behind, smiling for the camera, but her hand rested on the woman's shoulder in a way that looked less like affection and more like ownership. Eleanor. The name floated up from some deep place I had been taught never to visit. Eleanor, who sent birthday cards until I was 7, and then suddenly stopped. Eleanor, whose name made Mom cross herself and change the subject. Eleanor, who, according to every story I had ever been told, was buried in a cemetery 2 towns over with an infant no one ever named. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, the photograph trembling between my fingers. All the pieces I had never been allowed to touch started clicking together with a sound I could almost hear. I gave up my full scholarship to state because Dad had his first heart attack, and Mom said someone had to stay home. I worked nights at the hospital filing charts while Lily backpacked through Europe on money Mom swore came from odd jobs. I moved back into my childhood bedroom when Dad's cancer came back the second time, paid the co-pays, drove to every appointment, held the bucket when the chemo made him sick. I took the library job because it had benefits and paid enough to keep the mortgage current when Mom said they were a little short. I never asked where the money went because I was raised to believe asking was selfish. Every sacrifice I made had a price tag, and that price tag had been attached to Lily's life. The condo in Florida, she bought at 30. The destination wedding in Cancun. The private preschool for her children that cost more per year than I made in 2. All of it paid for with money that was supposed to be mine. Money I never knew existed because I was too busy being the daughter who stayed. I looked at the woman holding the baby holding me and felt something inside my chest tear wide open. That woman had rocked me, sung to me, counted my fingers and toes. That woman had come back when I was 3 with a little suitcase and a car seat because she wanted her daughter. And my mother, the woman standing beside her in the photograph, had called the police. I pressed the picture to my heart the way I had pressed Clara's envelope earlier. The paper was soft from years of being hidden, but the truth on it was sharp enough to cut. Why did my mother spend my entire life making sure I never met the woman in that photograph? The question burned so hot I could not sit still. Why did my mother spend my entire life making sure I never met the woman in that photograph? I folded the Polaroid along its old crease, slipped it back into my purse like contraband, and looked at the second smaller envelope Clara had tucked inside the first. Inside was a brass key on a red ribbon and a slip of paper with an address. First National Bank, State Street, Madison, Box 318. Richard Ellison had added a post-it. I'll meet you anytime. Just call. I called at 7 the next morning. He answered on the first ring, voice calm, as if he had been waiting by the phone since 1974. By 9:30, we were standing in the vault corridor of the bank, fluorescent lights humming overhead, the air smelling of metal and old paper. The clerk slid the long steel box across the counter, asked me to sign, and left us alone in the small viewing room with its plain table and single chair. My hands shook so badly Richard had to steady the key for me. The lid came up with a soft sigh, like the box itself had been holding its breath for decades. First was the will. 8 pages on heavy cream stock, dated 2 years before Grandma died. I knew her handwriting the way I knew my own heartbeat: tall loops, sharp crosses, the little curlicue on every capital N. Page 5 was the one that stopped my heart. In black ink, underlined once. Upon my death, 70% of my entire estate, real, personal, and mixed, shall pass to my granddaughter, Nora Elizabeth Harlan. 15% to my daughter, Clara Marie Harlan. 15% to my daughter, Eleanor Grace Harlan. The rest of the page named executors, trustees, contingencies, but those percentages were the only numbers I saw. 70, 15, 15. No mention of Lily anywhere except a single line at the end. Should Nora, Clara, and Eleanor all predecease me, then, to my great-granddaughter Lillian Harlan. I had to read it 3 times before the words stopped swimming. 70%. Not a mistake, not a draft. Grandma's final notarized witnessed wish. I ran my thumb across the raised seal, feeling the ridges like braille that spelled out the life I was supposed to have had. Richard waited, patient as stone. When I finally looked up, he lifted out the next layer, bundles and bundles of letters tied with faded blue ribbon, each bundle labeled by decade. 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. Hundreds of envelopes, all addressed to me in the same elegant, slanted handwriting I now recognized from birthday cards I had not been allowed to keep. Every single one bore the same brutal red stamp, returned to sender by request of family. I opened the top bundle with fingers that felt borrowed from someone else. The earliest letter was dated 3 weeks after I was born. The paper was thin airmail stock, the ink slightly faded. My dearest Nora, you weighed 6 pounds 11 ounces, and you have your father's nose and my mother's eyes. I held you for exactly 7 minutes before they took you away. I will love you every day of my life. Happy 3-week birthday, my sweet girl, Eleanor. The next was my first birthday, then my second. Christmas cards with tiny handprints in paint. School pictures she must have begged someone else to send her. Report cards I never knew anyone saved. A pressed 4-leaf clover on my 10th birthday. A photograph of a teenage girl with my face wearing a graduation cap I never owned. Each letter ended the same way. All my love forever, your mother, Eleanor. I went through them like a starving person, tears falling onto the paper until the ink threatened to run. There were so many I lost count. 400, 500, maybe more. 48 years of a woman trying to reach her daughter across a wall built by people who shared my roof. The newest bundle was only 3 envelopes thick. The top one was postmarked 3 months ago. The handwriting was shakier now, the paper scented faintly with the lavender sachets I remembered from Grandma's drawers. My Nora, if you are reading this, it means Clara kept her promise and you finally know I am alive. I never stopped being your mother. Not for 1 minute of one day. I am 72 now and the doctors say time is short, but none of that matters if I can just see you once before I go. I live quietly in Door County. The address is on the back. Come when you are ready. I will be waiting with the same arms that held you the day you were born. I never stopped being your mother. Eleanor. I pressed that letter to my lips and tasted salt. All my life I had been told I was the child who was kept the one they chose to love. Every sacrifice praised as proof I was wanted. Every slight explained away, as that's just how families are. I had grown up believing I was the lucky one because at least I had a mother. Someone made sure I grew up believing I was unwanted, but the truth was the exact opposite. The truth was the exact opposite, and the realization hit me so hard I had to sit down on the little stool in the bank's viewing room. Eleanor's last letter still pressed against my chest. Richard Ellison watched me without speaking, then quietly closed the lid of the safety deposit box and carried it back to the vault. When he returned, he placed a business card on the table. Not his own, but one with a different name embossed in heavy black ink. Margaret M. Whitcomb. Whitcomb & Associates Trusts and Estates. She's the best in the state, he said simply. She owes Clara a favor from 40 years ago. Tell her I sent you. Tell her it's time to collect. I drove to Milwaukee that same afternoon, the box riding shotgun in a canvas bank bag, every returned letter a heartbeat against my thigh. Margaret Whitcomb's office occupied the top floor of a restored brick warehouse overlooking Lake Michigan. She was 65 if she was a day, silver hair pulled back in a severe knot, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than my car. She did not smile when I walked in, did not offer coffee or small talk. She simply pointed to the conference table and said, "Show me." I laid it all out. Grandma's original will. The forged withdrawal slips, the stack of returned letters. The Polaroid with the crescent moon birthmark. She worked in silence, turning pages with the speed and precision of someone who had seen every kind of family betrayal and was no longer surprised by any of it. When she reached the guardianship petition dated March 2019. My signature at the bottom, my name typed beneath it as Ward. Her face went the color of ash. "This is your mother's doing," she said, voice flat. She filed papers declaring you mentally incompetent, citing depression hoarding tendencies, and episodes of confusion requiring supervision. The doctor who signed the evaluation, Dr. Leonard Kasparian, lost his license in 2021 for fabricating records in exchange for cash. Your mother paid him $12,000 through a shell account. I can prove it. She slid the petition aside and pulled a thicker folder toward her property records she had already pulled while I was driving. There's more. Between 2015 and 2022, 4 parcels that belonged to your grandparents. The lake cottage, the 40 acres of timber, 2 rental houses in Madison were quietly quit-claimed to Lily Ann Harlan. Your signature appears on every deed. Same forged loops, same slant. The notary was a woman who worked for your mother's church friend. She retired to Arizona last year and is suddenly very hard to locate. I stared at the deeds until the lines blurred. Those properties were supposed to come to me. I had spent childhood summers at that lake cottage, learned to swim off that crooked dock. I had no idea they had ever been transferred out of trust. Margaret leaned back, the first crack of emotion showing in her eyes. This isn't greed, Nora. This is identity theft on a generational level. They didn't just steal your money. They stole your legal personhood. And they're not finished. She tapped a fresh printout dated 2 days ago, an application to sell the ancestral farmhouse, my farmhouse 70% mine, to a developer for $3.8 million. Closing scheduled for January 10th. They're planning something big right now, and they need you either compliant or disqualified before the check clears. We have to move quietly, and we have to move tonight. She outlined the plan in crisp military sentences. Emergency temporary guardianship challenge. Lease pendants on every property, forensic accountant, on retainer, private investigator tailing my mother and Lily. We file at 8 tomorrow morning, she said. Tonight, you disappear. No contact, no credit cards, no library computer. I have a safe apartment downtown. You'll stay there until the judge signs the freeze. I nodded numb, already reaching for my coat. For the first time in my life, someone was fighting for me instead of against me. Margaret walked me to the elevator, pressed the button, then paused. "One more thing," she said softly. "Before Clara died, she made me run a DNA comparison. She had a lock of your baby hair and a sample from Eleanor. I already know your blood type, Nora. I've known for 6 months. You're going to be all right." The elevator doors slid open. I stepped inside, clutching the canvas bag like a shield. My phone, which had been on silent since Christmas Eve, buzzed once in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw the name I had both dreaded and expected. Mom. And then my mother called. The elevator doors closed and the car began its slow descent, but I could not move. Mom lit up the screen like a warning flare. I stared at it until the buzzing stopped, then started again. Third time I pressed accept and put the phone to my ear without saying a word. "Nora!" Her voice cracked across the line like a whip. "Where the hell are you?" I stayed silent. The elevator hummed. Somewhere between floors, I found the strength to keep my mouth shut. "Do you have any idea what you did?" She went on louder now, the way she always got when she wanted the neighbors to hear. "You humiliated us in front of the entire family." Lily cried herself sick. The children kept asking where Aunt Nora went. "You ruined Christmas, Nora. Christmas. After everything we've done for you. Everything we've done for you." The phrase landed exactly where she meant it to, right on the old bruise. "I'm 52 years old," I said quietly. "I got a $2 card while Lily got a $12,000 watch. Tell me again what you've done for me." She laughed, short, sharp, ugly. "Oh, here we go. Poor Nora, always the victim. Lily is the only daughter who ever mattered. And you know why? Because she gave us grandchildren, she gave us joy, she gave us something to be proud of. You gave us nothing but bills and worry." I closed my eyes and saw Eleanor's handwriting. "I never stopped being your mother." "You still there?" Mom snapped. "Good. Because I'm done with the drama. The house is being sold next week. Developers made an offer we can't refuse. You'll finally get your share. Don't worry, a few thousand maybe after taxes. All you have to do is come home and sign the papers. We can put this whole ugly episode behind us. A few thousand. For the house my great-grandfather built with his own hands, the one that was 70% mine." My fingers tightened around the phone until the plastic creaked. In the background came the rustle of fabric, someone leaning close to the receiver. A whisper, low but perfectly clear. "Make sure she signs by Friday or we lose the buyer." I knew that voice before my brain even placed it. Denise Marie Carter, my maid of honor who never got used because I never got married. The girl who sat with me on the bleachers in high school while I cried over college acceptance letters I would never mail. The woman who brought casseroles when Dad was sick, and always asked about Lily's latest vacation while squeezing my hand like she felt sorry for me. Denise, who had not called once since Christmas Eve. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it as if it had grown teeth. Mom was still talking something about family sticking together, about how I owed them for keeping a roof over my head, but the words were just noise now. Denise, not just family. Everyone I ever trusted. I ended the call without a sound, turned the phone off completely, and let the silence of the dropping elevator carry me the rest of the way down. And I realized the betrayal wasn't just family. It was everyone I ever trusted. The elevator doors opened onto the parking garage, and I walked out into the cold Milwaukee night, still hearing Denise's whisper loop in my head. Make sure she signs by Friday. I had trusted that voice with every secret I owned from the time we were 14. I had let her hold my hand at my father's first funeral, let her read my college rejection letters, let her cry with me when I realized I would never leave that house. And all the while, she had been paid handsomely to keep me blind. Margaret's safe apartment was a nondescript one-bedroom above a closed bakery on the east side. She had left the key under the mat and a note that said, "Burner phone on the counter. Use nothing else." I locked the door, dropped the bank bag on the table, and opened the laptop she had left for me. Within an hour, her forensic accountant had remote access and was tearing through decades of accounts like a bloodhound. The first file he sent made my stomach turn. Denise had been on retainer as the family's financial advisor since 2003, the year she got her license. Her commission statements were obscene: 3% on every transfer, 2% on every investment shift finder's fees on real estate deals I never knew existed. Over 20 years, she had cleared almost $800,000 moving money that was never supposed to leave my name. Every time I thought I was helping pay a medical bill or keep the lights on a chunk, had been skimmed straight into her pocket, and then on to Lily's manicures, Lily's boats, Lily's private kindergarten tuition. Then came the emails. The accountant had cracked an old Yahoo account Mom thought was deleted. Hundreds of messages between her and Denise, some going back to flip phone days. I scrolled until the words blurred. 2009. Nora asked why the cottage taxes went up. Told her the trust was short. She bought it. Keep her scared of numbers. 2014. As long as Nora believes she's crazy, she'll never look at the accounts. The doctor visit next week should seal it. 2019. Guardianship filed. Dr. K says another $5,000, and he'll backdate whatever we need. Tell Lily she's getting the lake house for Christmas. 2023. The developer wants the farm by February. If Nora makes trouble, we trigger the psych hold. The facility owes me favors. I sat back so hard the chair rolled into the wall. Denise hadn't just helped. She had orchestrated. She had chosen the doctor, written the scripts Mom fed me about my anxiety, scheduled the appointments I was told were routine checkups. She had sat across from me at kitchen tables, smiling while she decided how much of my life was worth selling that month. I was still staring at the screen when the burner phone rang an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Nora Denise's voice, smaller than I remembered. "Don't hang up, please." I said nothing. "I know you hate me," she rushed on. "You should. I hate me. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. There's something your mother has hidden for 52 years that will destroy her when it comes out. I have proof. Medical records, adoption papers, the real birth certificate, everything. I'll give it all to you. Just meet me. Let me make this right." The room felt suddenly airless. Proof. The real birth certificate. 52 years. Where, I asked, voice flat. "There's a diner on Highway 12, the one with the broken neon cow. Tomorrow noon. Come alone. I'll bring everything." A pause, then softer. "I'm sorry, Nora. I was scared and greedy and I picked the wrong side. Let me fix it." I ended the call without promising anything. My reflection in the dark window looked like a stranger, eyes too wide, mouth set hard. Denise had spent 2 decades teaching me I was worthless. Now she wanted redemption in exchange for the final key. But Denise wasn't calling to help. She was calling to bargain. The burner phone went dark in my hand, but the silence that followed was louder than any scream. Denise wasn't calling to help. She was calling to bargain. I set the phone down like it might explode and stared at the black screen until the numbers on Margaret's laptop caught my eye again. The accountant had kept digging while I was on the line. A new file had appeared flagged urgent titled Petition 2020-1947. I opened it. The first page was a court filing dated February 14th, 2020. Valentine's Day of all cruel jokes. Petition for appointment of guardian and conservator over the person and estate of Nora Elizabeth Harlan. The petitioners were listed in neat order. Judith Marie Harlan. Mother Robert. James Harlan. Father Lily Ann Harlan Weber. Sister and witness financial advisor Denise Marie Carter. All 4 signatures sat at the bottom like a family portrait drawn in ink. I had been living in the same house when they signed it. I had cooked them breakfast that morning. The petition claimed I suffered from progressive cognitive decline, delusional thinking, and inability to manage daily affairs. It requested immediate removal of all my legal rights, transfer of assets to a family protective trust, and appointment of Judith and Lily as co-guardians. The attached psychiatric evaluation, 32 pages stamped, received by the court, was written by the same disgraced Dr. Kasparian. It described a woman I did not recognize, paranoid, hoarding receipts, unable to remember dates, prone to wandering, requiring 24-hour supervision. It quoted me saying I believed my family was stealing from me. and that I heard voices telling me to burn the house down to get justice. Direct quotes in quotation marks dated from appointments I had never attended. I scrolled faster. Page after page of fabricated symptoms, invented conversations, doctored mood charts. One section claimed I had attempted to overdose on Dad's pain pills in December 2019, the same month Lily bought her first Tesla with cash. Another said I had threatened to kidnap my nieces if I was not given money. Every lie was timed to make me sound dangerous to myself and others. The relief they requested was chilling in its simplicity. Declare Nora incapacitated. Revoke her rights. Redirect all future inheritance to the protective trust controlled by the petitioners. Once Mom and Dad died, Lily would inherit everything unchallenged because I would no longer legally exist as a competent heir. They had filed this while I was still sleeping under their roof, while I was still driving Dad to chemo, while I was still ironing Lily's Christmas dresses. They had planned to wait for nature to remove my parents, then wheel me into a courtroom, drugged if necessary, and finish the job. The Christmas fight wasn't the breaking point. It was the interruption. I closed the laptop and walked to the window. Snow had started again, soft and indifferent. 5 years ago, they had already written me out of the will, out of the family, out of my own mind. All they needed was time and my continued obedience. They didn't wait for me to leave. They planned to erase me while I was still in the same house. The snow kept falling past the window, soft as forgiveness, and twice as cold. They had planned to erase me while I still slept 10 feet down the hall from their lies. I turned from the glass, picked up the burner phone, and dialed Margaret. It was 3 a.m, but she answered before the second ring. "File it now," I said. My voice sounded like someone else's steady final. "Everything you have. Emergency injunction. Freeze it all." She didn't ask if I was sure. She simply said, "On my way to the courthouse." Judge Owens owes me a favor and hates fraud more than she hates being woken up. Stay dark. By 8:30, the papers were signed. By 9:15, every bank account, brokerage, trust, and deed bearing any version of my name or my grandparents' estate was locked tighter than a vault. The ancestral farmhouse came off the market so fast, the developer's lawyer left a voicemail that curdled milk. Liz Pendon's flags went up on every parcel from the lake cottage to the timberland. Lily's cards. Mom's cards. Even the country club membership that paid for Mom's weekly mahjong luncheons, all frozen pending forensic review. I sat in Margaret's conference room with a cup of coffee I didn't taste and watched the fallout in real time. The private investigator she kept on retainer forwarded screenshots from Lily's Instagram stories. First, a selfie in a dressing room with piles of shopping bags captioned, "Living my best life." Then 10 minutes later, a tear-streaked rant in her SUV because every card was declined at the register. The country club called Mom personally to inform her that until further notice her charging privileges were suspended. The woman who answered actually heard Mom scream and drop the phone. Then my burner started lighting up. First voicemail, 10. 12 a.m. Mom, voice shaking with rage. "Nora, what have you done? Do you have any idea how ungrateful you look right now? After everything we sacrificed for you." Second 10:27, tears now, theatrical and loud. "I can't breathe. The doctor says my blood pressure. If I die because of this stress, it's on your conscience." Third 10:41, saccharine calm. "Sweetheart, let's talk. There's money put aside for you, a nice little nest egg. Just come home, sign the dismissal, and we'll forget this ever happened. You don't want to tear the family apart over misunderstandings, do you?" Fourth 11:03, pure venom. "You will never see your father alive again if you keep this up. I swear on his grave." I let them all play on speaker while Margaret took notes and the investigator recorded metadata. Each message was another brick in the wall we were building for court. By noon, the developer had already threatened to sue for breach of contract, which only made Margaret smile for the first time all week. "Let him," she said. "He'll be suing a frozen estate and a woman who's about to be very publicly declared competent. Discovery is going to be fun." I was staring at the voicemail counter climbing 789 when a new text slid across the burner screen from a number I didn't recognize. "It's Mark, Lily's husband. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need to talk. Alone. Today." There are things even I didn't know until this morning. Please. I looked at the message a long time. Mark had always been quiet, polite, the kind of man who carried diaper bags without complaining and thanked me for babysitting like I was doing him a favor instead of the other way around. I had never once heard him raise his voice to Lily, not even when she spent $30,000 on a handbag. I typed back library parking lot 4 p.m. Come alone. And then Lily's husband asked to meet me in secret. The library parking lot was nearly empty at 4 o'clock, just slush and sodium lights and the faint smell of exhaust. I sat in Margaret's borrowed sedan with the engine running for heat and watched Mark pull in beside me. He looked smaller than I remembered, no longer the easygoing husband who always carried Lily's purse at family gatherings. His coat was unbuttoned despite the cold, and the skin under his eyes was gray. He carried a plain manila folder against his chest like a shield. He tapped on my window. I lowered it an inch. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said. I wasn't sure I should. He nodded, glanced over both shoulders, then slid the folder through the gap. Read this first, then decide if you still want me in your car. I took it. Inside were printed emails, dozens of them, all from Lily to Mom. The earliest was dated 12 years ago when Lily was 26 and Mark had just proposed. Mom, we have to be more careful. Denise says Nora almost saw the lake cottage deed. If she ever finds out how much is really hers, she'll hate us forever. Another from 2016. Nora asked why we never talk about Aunt Eleanor. I told her the same story, died in childbirth, tragic end of discussion. She seemed to buy it. We can't let her meet Eleanor. Ever. The most recent was 2 weeks old. Whatever we do, Nora can't know the truth before the farm sells. If she finds out Eleanor is alive, she'll run straight to her and never speak to me again. I can't lose my sister over money. I looked up. Mark was watching me, hands shoved deep in his pockets. There's one more thing, he said quietly. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small photograph in a cracked plastic sleeve. He passed it through the window like it might burn him. It was the same hospital picture I already carried in my purse. But this copy was older edges, soft colors, richer. On the back in Grandma's unmistakable script were the words, Eleanor and her daughter Nora Elizabeth, 3 days old. Below that, a date, June 12, 1972. And beneath the date, a single sentence in the same ink. She has her mother's eyes and her father's fight. I turned the photo over. The newborn's tiny left hand rested against Eleanor's cheek, crescent moon birthmark clear as day. Mark's voice was barely above a whisper. Lily's known since she was 15. She overheard your mom and Grandma arguing the week Grandma changed the will. She never told me until this morning when the bank started calling and she realized the money train had stopped. She cried for 2 hours straight, Nora. Not about the money. About you. She's terrified of losing you to your real mother. The word real hung between us in the cold air like a living thing. I looked at him. Really looked for the first time. Why are you telling me this now? Because I love my wife, he said. But I'm done being married to a lie. And because those little girls asleep in our house deserve an aunt who isn't a ghost story. Their mother is ashamed of. He stepped back from the car, hands raised, palms open. That's everything I have. Do whatever you need to do. Just don't punish my kids for what their mother helped hide. He walked back to his truck without waiting for an answer, climbed in, and drove away. I sat in the darkening lot holding the photograph to the dashboard light, tracing the curve of Eleanor's smile around the newborn me. So who exactly was Eleanor? And why had my entire family spent 52 years making sure I never called her mom? The question had lived in my mouth for weeks. So who exactly was Eleanor? And why had my entire family spent 52 years making sure I never called her mom? On the morning of the hearing, I walked into the Dane County Courthouse carrying it like a loaded gun. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, wood-paneled and cold, packed with reporters kept behind velvet rope. Mom sat at the defense table in a navy suit she must have bought for funerals. Hands folded so tight her knuckles were white. Lily was beside her, eyes red mascara already smudged. Denise had taken a plea and was testifying remotely from another building. Her face floated on a monitor, pale and small. Dad had been too sick to attend. Margaret began with the video. Grandma's hospice room filled the screen. Yellow walls, beeping machines. Grandma's thin hand clutching mine as she spoke directly to the camera Clara had hidden in a flower arrangement. "If anything happens to me," she rasped, "make sure Nora gets what I left her. 70%. She's the only one who ever loved me without counting the cost." Then she looked straight into the lens and said my name like a blessing. The date stamp in the corner was 3 days before she died. The room went dead quiet. Next came the returned letters, hundreds of them projected one after another on the wall. Eleanor's handwriting, the red stamps, the dates marching across 5 decades. Then the forged deeds, the fake psychiatric reports, the bank transfers that matched Lily's European vacations, and Mom's country club bills to the penny. Margaret turned to Mom. "Did you intercept mail addressed to your daughter?" Mom's lawyer tried to object. The judge waved him off. "Yes," Mom said, voice barely audible. "Did you forge her signature on financial documents?" A long pause. "Yes." "Did you knowingly use funds belonging to Nora Elizabeth Harlan for personal expenses?" Mom's eyes flicked to Lily, to the reporters, to the floor. "Yes." The admissions came out like teeth being pulled, each one louder than the last. Lily sobbed silently into a tissue. I sat very still and let the truth do the work I had never been allowed to do. Margaret rested her case. The judge, a woman with steel gray hair and no patience for theatrics, looked at me over her glasses. "Ms. Harlan is there. Anything further you wish the court to hear before I rule on the temporary injunction and the request to vacate all prior guardianships?" I stood. "Just one thing, Your Honor. I would like to call a character witness." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Name?" "Eleanor Grace Harlan." A ripple went through the room. Mom's head snapped up. Lily stopped crying. The judge glanced at the bailiff. "Is Eleanor Grace Harlan present?" The double doors at the back of the courtroom opened slowly. She walked in the way sunrise moves across water, deliberate, inevitable, impossible to look away from. 72 years old, tall auburn hair, now silver but still thick, wearing Grandma's red wool coat with the fox fur collar that I remembered from childhood photographs. She moved down the aisle without hurry, cane tapping softly, eyes locked on mine the entire way. The courtroom held its breath. She stopped at the gate, smiled once at the judge, then turned to me. She looked straight at me with my own eyes and said the words I had waited 52 years to hear. She looked straight at me with my own eyes and said the words I had waited 52 years to hear. "My name is Eleanor Grace Harlan, and I am this woman's mother." The courtroom exhaled as one living thing. I felt the sound leave my body before I heard it. Eleanor never raised her voice. She did not need to. Every syllable landed like a church bell in the stunned silence. "I carried you for 9 months, Nora Elizabeth." She turned slow and deliberate and pointed one gloved finger at the defense table. "Your mother," she said, letting the word fall like a stone into still water, "only carried the lie for 48 years. Mom made a sound I had never heard from a human throat, and folded forward arms wrapped around her middle, as if the truth had punched straight through her ribs. The bailiff started toward her, but she waved him off, gasping tears already cutting tracks through her carefully applied foundation. Margaret rose, calm as winter, and slid a sealed court envelope across to the judge. "DNA results, Your Honor. Collected and tested under chain of custody 6 weeks ago. Probability of maternity 99.999%. Filed this morning." The judge broke the seal, scanned the pages, and looked at Mom with something close to pity. "Mrs. Harlan, do you dispute these findings?" Mom tried to stand swayed and sat back down hard. "I just wanted a baby," she whispered, then louder, broken, "I just wanted a baby." The words cracked open the room. Reporters scribbled so fast their pens squeaked. Lily shot to her feet, face blotched red, pointing at Eleanor with a trembling finger. "You can't have her," she screamed. "She's my sister. You gave her up. You don't get to come back now and take her away." The outburst hung in the air like smoke. Eleanor turned to Lily, gentle, almost kind. "I never gave her up, sweetheart. She was taken from me. And I have spent every day since trying to get her back." Lily's knees buckled. She would have hit the floor if her lawyer hadn't caught her. Between sobs, she choked out the confession the whole room had been waiting for. "I knew," she cried. "I was 15. I heard them fighting. I knew Eleanor was alive, and I never told Nora because I was afraid she'd love her more than me. I knew everything." Mom reached for her, keening Lily, "No, but Lily jerked away as if burned. The judge's gavel came down once sharp. Order. The single word cut through the chaos like a blade. She looked at Eleanor, then at me, then at the weeping women who had raised me on lies. Ms. Harlan the elder, she said to Eleanor, approached the bench. Eleanor walked forward, cane tapping red coat bright as fresh blood against the dark wood. She stopped in front of me, first reached out and brushed a tear from my cheek with a thumb that trembled only slightly. I'm here now, she said softly, and I'm never leaving again. Then she continued to the witness stand straight-backed, unafraid, while the family I had known my whole life collapsed into ruins behind her. And for the first time in my life, someone fought to keep me, instead of throw me away. For the first time in my life, someone fought to keep me, instead of throw me away. And the feeling was so foreign it almost hurt. Eleanor stood at the witness rail hand, resting lightly on the wood, as if she had been waiting 52 years for the right moment to lean on something solid. The judge listened while Eleanor spoke quiet, precise, devastating. She told of the day I was born, of the 7 minutes she was allowed to hold me before my grandparents took me from her arms. She told of the threats, the police at the door when I was 3, the returned letters, the nights she drove past the house just to see a light in what she hoped was my window. When she finished, the courtroom was so still I could hear Mom's ragged breathing 10 feet away. The judge did not need long. She returned an hour later, robes rustling like judgment itself, and read the ruling in a voice that left no cracks for appeal. All prior guardianships vacated. The original will of my grandmother enforced in full 70% of the estate to me, 15% each to Clara's estate, and to Eleanor. Punitive damages assessed against Mom and Lily jointly for fraud, forgery, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, an amount that made Lily go white beneath her tears. Every deed, every transfer, every dollar siphoned since 1998, ordered returned with interest. Lily stripped entirely of any contingent beneficiary status. The judge used the phrase forfeiture by unconscionable conduct and underlined it with her tone. Court officers stood ready to escort Mom and Lily from the building the moment the gavel fell. It was over. I owned what had always been mine, and they owned what they had done. Afterward, in the quiet corridor outside the courtroom, Eleanor took my hand and led me to a small conference room the bailiff had cleared for us. She produced a leather folder and slid it across the table. This is separate from everything the court decided today, she said. Inside were deeds to a 3-story Victorian in Door County, painted the soft blue of Lake Michigan, in October, wraparound porch stained glass, 5 bedrooms, a turret. I bought it 30 years ago with the money Grandma left me. I always kept one room ready, hoping. It's yours now. This was always meant to be yours and mine. I traced the address with a finger that still trembled. A house that had never been touched by their lies. I want to do something with it, I said. The words came out steady, surprising even me. A residence. For women over 50 who have been bled dry by the people who were supposed to love them. A place where they can come with nothing but the clothes on their backs and leave with their names back. Safe beds, legal help, someone to listen without charging by the hour. I know what it feels like to wake up and realize everything you thought was yours was stolen. I don't want another woman my age to sleep in a motel because she has nowhere else to go. Eleanor's eyes filled, but her smile was fierce. Then we'll open the doors together. We walked out of the courthouse into the weak February sun, arms-linked reporters shouting questions we did not answer. The air tasted different, like the first breath after surfacing from deep water. That night in the apartment that had become home for the last time, Eleanor came to me carrying a small wooden box. Inside was one last envelope, thick cream stock, sealed with the same red wax rose I remembered from Clara's letter. My name was written across the front in handwriting I now knew better than my own. I promised myself, Eleanor said, voice soft, I would only give you this when you were finally free. But Eleanor saved one last envelope sealed since the day I was born. But Eleanor saved one last envelope sealed since the day I was born. We sat together on the wide porch of the blue Victorian, the lake wind, carrying the first promise of spring. She placed the envelope in my hands the way a priest places communion on a tongue. Reverent, certain, final. The wax rose was cracked but unbroken, the paper soft from decades of being carried close to her heart. I broke the seal with the same pen I had used in the motel that first night, and the letter unfolded like a flower that had waited 52 years for sunlight. My darling Nora, if you are reading this, I am holding you again. Nothing else matters. You were never the spare child. You were the chosen one, chosen by me the moment I felt you move inside me. Chosen by your grandmother when she rewrote her will with shaking hands. Chosen by every woman in our line who refused to be silenced. I counted every day until I could hold you again. 251 days from the morning they took you until the morning you walked back into my arms. I never missed one, never. I will not waste breath on the people who hurt us. They live in a smaller story now. You and I are writing a bigger one. Live in the blue house. Fill it with women who have been told they are too old to matter, too quiet to be heard, too tired to start over. Let them wake to the sound of water and the smell of coffee and the knowledge that someone sees them. Let them leave stronger than they arrived. That is the inheritance I give you, not money, not land, but the chance to turn every wound into a door. I am here for all of it. The painting, the paperwork, the first resident who cries when she realizes the room is hers for as long as she needs. I am here for birthdays and quiet Tuesdays and every ordinary day we were denied. I am here, my girl. I never left. All my love every day, forever. Your mother, Eleanor. I read it twice, then folded it against my chest and let the tears come clean for the first time since Christmas Eve. Eleanor wrapped her arms around me from behind, chin resting on my shoulder, the way I had always imagined a mother would. We stayed like that until the sun slipped behind the water, and the porch lights came on one by one. In the months that followed, I chose the shape of my new life with the same deliberate care I once used to fold laundry for people who never said thank you. I see Eleanor every day, coffee on the porch, supper at the long oak table evenings, planning which bedroom will become a library. I speak to Mom only through lawyers now, and to Lily only when she writes letters I sometimes answer and sometimes don't. The boundaries are mine to draw, and I draw them in ink that does not smudge. The Blue House opened its doors in September. The first resident was 61, widowed, emptied by a son who forged her name on a reverse mortgage. The second was 58, thrown out by a daughter who wanted the paid-for house for Airbnb. They arrived with grocery bags and fear in their eyes, and they left months later with their shoulders back and laughter in their throats. More come every week. We are never full because healing makes room. I thought the story was finished. The lies exposed the money, returned the house full of second chances. I thought I had finally heard every secret, and just when I thought every secret had been told, another envelope arrived, this one addressed in my own grandmother's handwriting, postmarked the week before she died. And just when I thought every secret had been told, another envelope arrived, this one addressed in my own grandmother's handwriting, postmarked the week before she died. I stood on the porch, holding it, the lake glittering behind me. Eleanor's hand warm on my shoulder, the house full of women laughing in the kitchen over coffee and second chances. Whatever is inside that envelope will be part of a new chapter, not the old pain. I'll open it when I'm ready, and when I do, I'll tell you everything. Because this story, my story, is no longer just mine. It belongs to every woman who has ever been told she was too much or not enough. Every daughter who was made to feel like the spare. Every mother who fought in silence for the child they were forced to lose. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever swallowed your voice to keep the peace, if you've ever walked away from a table where you were offered crumbs while someone else got the feast, then this story is for you. I'm going to keep sharing it. The victories, the hard days, the women who walk through these doors carrying nothing but courage, and whatever Grandma wrote in that final letter. So if you want to walk the rest of this road with us, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the bell. Drop a comment below and tell me your story where you were the scapegoat, where you finally stood up, where you found your own blue house. I read every single one, and so do the women sitting around my kitchen table. Your words remind us we are never alone. Thank you for staying until the very last word. This is only the beginning. See you in the next chapter.